Welcome to News Breakdown. We know cannabis has been used around the world for over 1,000 years in various forms. The legalization of cannabis in the United States in the last 5 years has seen a number of countries follow in the United States' footsteps. It is still a substance and a subject that still divides nations, families, and religions around the world. However, with the advancement of technology and the understanding of the chemical compositions of the cannabis plant, we have seen a change in attitude towards the substance, in particular within the medical industry. We have also seen a boom in the commercialization of cannabis, in particular in the United States and Canada, with the issuing of various forms of licenses for businesses that are trading the commodity that is cannabis in the United States and Canada. A large number of cannapreneurs have sprung up in recent years. You've seen franchises being formed, you've seen large farming operations springing up, you also have seen a massive cannabis food industry springing up, and it continues to grow till this day. Canada claims to have the largest overall market where cannabis use of any kind is legal at the federal level. So within this segment of the episode, we will be looking at how cannabis has been applied for medicinal use. The cannabis plant is composed of over 100 chemicals known as cannabinoids, with each of these having a different effect on your body. I'll first point out the differences between medical and recreational cannabis, and the key difference is the two main chemicals used in the medicinal application of cannabis. These chemicals are tetrahydrocannabinol, or THC. This is the psychoactive compound in cannabis that is the element that produces the high. And the second chemical is CBD. This substance does not produce any psychoactive effects. Medical cannabis has a high CBD content, so when you're taking it, you don't feel the euphoria that's associated with the recreational counterpart, which has a high concentration of THC. We've seen the application of cannabis within the medical industry recently, in particular trying to treat ailments that haven't actually had a cure over the years, such as you will see kids with severe fitting disorders that are being treated by cannabis oil or THC oils, or kids that have been suffering from conditions such as leukemia. There has been multiple cases over the years proving that this is a useful plant if applied in the correct manner and dispensed in the correct manner. So we're going to look at the countries that consider cannabis legal. The way different countries see cannabis and how they handle the legality is still very much varied, even though there has been an ongoing trend of a positive attitude towards the legalization of weed for all purposes, as mentioned earlier. There's still parts of the world which still consider it quite illegal. Some countries' laws wouldn't punish you severely for small possession, and yet there are some countries which want to ban the weed completely and put it in the same category as some hard drugs. In this segment of the episode, we will be running through the list of countries which legally allow the use of cannabis either for recreational use or for medical application. And the first country on the list is Canada. So in Canada, you can use it for medicinal purposes as well as for recreational purposes. Medical cannabis has been legal in the country since 2001, although initially patients had to grow their own cannabis in Canada. New regulations in 2013, subsequently replaced in 2016, opened the door for licensed producers to supply medical cannabis to the patients across the country. The Canadian cannabis market in 2017 totaled around $600,000. However, the figure is projected to soar to $5.5 billion by 2022. The next country on the list is Uruguay, and they pretty much did it soon after the United States announced that they'll be legalizing the use of cannabis in certain states. So Uruguay does allow the use of medical marijuana as well as recreational purposes. Argentina's next on the list. They only allow medicinal use of the plant. Australia is on the list as well. They only allow medicinal use of the plant. However, Australia tends to be quite a conservative country, and for them to even allow the use of medicinal cannabis is quite a big move for them. Chile is on the list as well for medicinal use only. Colombia, the same applies, only medicinal use. Croatia, which is in Europe, that's only available for medicinal use. Cyprus is next on the list, and they're quite interested in terms of the approach that they've taken towards the medical application of the cannabis plant. So yes, it's allowed to be used medicinally, however, it's only available to cancer patients. The Czech Republic only allow medicinal use. Denmark, Finland, Germany only allows medicinal use. And an additional point on Germany, which is they are likely to become the top international market for medical cannabis, where use is legal at the federal level. The country's medical cannabis market is expected to increase to $1.6 billion by 2022, and that's from around $260 million in 2018 only. Germany claims the largest population in the European Union, and its laws make medical cannabis easily available, which makes rapid growth for the German medical market likely. Moving on the list, we have Greece. They only allow medicinal use. Israel, the same, only medicinal use. Italy, Jamaica is quite an interesting one, I thought. Of course, it's part of Jamaican culture, or if you want to say part of one of the key religions in Jamaica, which is Rastafarian, for them to use cannabis for recreational purposes or for religious purposes, if you want to say that. However, it is still illegal in Jamaica for recreational purposes. It's only for medicinal use. However, you will find that in most rural parts of Jamaica, away from the big cities, etc., the authorities tend to take a relaxed approach in terms of how they police and administer any punishment for any use of cannabis. Next on the list, with medicinal use only, is Luxembourg, which is a small European nation. Macedonia is on the list as well for medicinal use only. Malta, Mexico. However, the THC content in Mexico has to be less than 1%, and this is only for medicinal use. Interestingly, the Netherlands find themselves on this list as well, of medicinal use only. You would think that they would obviously allow recreational use. However, within their laws, that's actually not the case. A lot of people that live in and around Europe would have traveled to Amsterdam to use cannabis for recreational purposes, and of course Amsterdam is within the Netherlands, that's their capital city, but they have quite a relaxed approach in terms of how the plant is used within their country. There's a lot of commercialization in a sense of cannabis within Amsterdam itself, in that particular small territory and some of the surrounding cities. You can pop into a cafe even if you don't hold a license, even if you are a foreigner, even if you are a visitor. You can go to a cafe, sit down, do what you need to do within the cafe, and you can leave. However, it's not legal for recreational use, which is quite an interesting stance that they tend to take. I do believe a lot of people that visit the Netherlands do visit the Netherlands for that particular reason alone, to go and use cannabis recreationally. So I do also think that this would contribute a large amount of money towards the Netherlands or the Dutch GDP. We'll move on to the list. We've got Norway, again, only for medicinal use. Peru, medicinal use only. Poland, medicinal use. Portugal, yes. However, Portugal actually sort of decriminalized all drugs a while back, and it has been an experiment that also has worked for them. So if you are caught with a small amount for recreational purposes, you're not going to get arrested. You do get some sort of warning. However, if you do continue to offend, then there will be repercussions based on how many times you have been reoffending. However, it's not legal within the law for recreational use. The same applies to San Marino, South Korea, Sri Lanka, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom. And interestingly, on that list is Zimbabwe, which is a small African country based on the southern tip of the continent, and they do allow medicinal use of cannabis. So I do believe maybe they've spotted a loophole, not even a loophole as such, but an opportunity to serve the world market for medicinal cannabis. So that forms the list of all the countries that allow the use of medicinal cannabis. However, there's one country that obviously I haven't mentioned, and that will be the United States. The United States has a very complex set of laws that govern each individual state, so that's why I will have to have a separate segment for the US. To briefly explain what I meant by the previous statement, with all the states in the US, they are governed by state law, as well as a federal law, which is a blanket law that covers all states. Both medical and recreational cannabis use remain illegal at the federal level in the US. The Controlled Substances Act of 1970 placed cannabis in the most restricted category, Schedule 1, which includes drugs that the US government deemed had no accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse. But individual states began to push back against federal cannabis policy, beginning with a ballot initiative in California passed in 1996 that legalized medical cannabis in the state. Other states soon followed California's lead. In 2012, Colorado and Washington state approved ballot initiatives that legalized recreational cannabis. With that said, here's a list of the US states, districts and territories that have broadly legalized either medical cannabis or recreational cannabis as of November 30, 2018. So first on the list we do have Alaska, which allows recreational as well as medicinal use. California, both recreational and medicinal. Same goes with Colorado, both medicinal and recreational. The District of Columbia, Maine, Massachusetts, Michigan, Nevada, Oregon, Vermont, Washington, and then we start getting it to the states that only allow medicinal. So we've got Arizona, Arkansas, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, the small island territory of Guam, Hawaii, Illinois, Louisiana, Maryland, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, Puerto Rico, Rhode Island, last but not least Utah, and then West Virginia. California is by far the largest cannabis market in the US and in the world. The state's cannabis sales were close to $3 billion in 2017. The state's total cannabis market is projected to soar to $7.7 billion by 2022. So we'll look at the downside of the commercialization of cannabis or the application of cannabis within the medical industry. Medicinal cannabis is on the verge of a huge transformation. Some may argue that we've already reached that particular point. However, there are always people and other businesses that will want to get control of any industry such as the cannabis industry and the position it finds itself in. As the evidence proves that cannabis is a very useful plant and that can be used medicinally, the pharmaceutical industry has been circling around the newly formed industry like vultures in the African heat. As it stands, the majority of the commercial operations within the cannabis business are run by independent companies, with a number of startups that are funded by external investors operating in the infant industry. We know the big pharma companies like dominating their industry, and there's not much room for any competition in their industry. Big pharma companies are poised to take hold of the new cannabis industry, and we know once these big conglomerates begin to get involved, it becomes all about the profits, and the initial goal which was set out gets forgotten. Unfortunately, as most of the world operates with a free market model, it is difficult to keep the vultures away, and this is one big negative to take away from the boom of the cannabis commercial space. So in conclusion, even before significant efforts began to legalize cannabis, several countries and US states have moved to decriminalize the drug through the relaxation of criminal penalties associated with personal cannabis use. The biggest factor behind the push to legalize cannabis has been growing public support for the legalization. One major reason why the legalization of cannabis has picked up support around the world is that millennials are heavily in favor of legalization. Millennials have overtaken baby boomers as the largest living adult generation. So of course, thoughts and opinions do change down generations, and this is what we're seeing, and it is starting to happen now. So of course, thank you so much for watching News Breakdown once again. If you're watching this video on YouTube and you're not subscribed to the channel, please do hit that subscribe button. If you are listening to the audio version on whatever podcast platform you're listening to, by all means, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching News Breakdown.